Welcome to Cast of Creators. We're your hosts. I'm Nelson Thal.
And I'm Casey Stewart. We've spent our careers in media and publishing, and now we're setting the stage for creative people who inspire us to share their stories.
Cast of Creators is presented by our new browser called Hover. It's unlike any browser you've ever used because it's social.
Hover makes browsing fun. You can follow people and your favorite sites to discover and discuss the web all in one place. Download Hover, that's HVR, in the App Store or the Play Store.
On today's episode, we chat with a fantastic architect and interior designer named Beth Wassermuhl.
We learned about her love for hotels, how she became an architect, and she took us through the design process of one of her latest projects. Honestly, it's stunning.
Here we go. Beth, welcome.
Yes,
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's super exciting to have you here because I've always been fascinated personally with interior design. I like to do a little interior design dabbling, but you are next level and you're making unbelievable things come to reality.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's really cool to watch. And you are really a part of an architecture family in many respects. And you started to come at this probably pretty young. It surrounded you. So how did it all start?
Yes, everything you say is correct. I am definitely a member of an architecture family. My husband is an architect. He's my partner in Studio We. My father is an architect. And so I've grown up with it from a very young age. It's definitely inspired my career. I don't know how I could say it hasn't.
Actually, my career has nothing to do with them.
It has nothing to do with it.
Which is interesting. It's funny, you know?
Yeah. I'm always amazed. I'm always amazed at the new ways that I arrive at it and the insights I have, just because, I have been doing it for such a long time. But yeah, so when I was a kid, my dad would come home and he would bring drawings with him and he'd have buckets of markers and I would go to his office and just watch everybody draw.
Yeah.
And look at all the colors, which is, very inspiring as a little kid.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah, to see that.
It's cool to have a really creative father like that too. And he
cool.
would be working on a building, right? He'd be designing buildings.
Yes, big buildings, lots of big buildings. It was very cool to see. It was cool to see how he would build a business. It was cool to see how he ran the business. It was cool to see him draw the drawings, make the buildings, figure out all the problems. It's all problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Architecture is all putting the pieces together. Nothing is arbitrary. Nothing's left to chance.
Right.
And so it's funny because on site, the builders are sometimes not following the plans. It's this is why we made the plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, his career has definitely inspired my career. And I wouldn't say that it's been a smooth trajectory from day one for me. I think sometimes it can be hard.
Definitely.
Yes, coming from a family who's already into or interested in a specific field, because you're always wondering where do I fit in? How do I fit in? And it's not always a smooth, you tend to question.
Yes.
You tend to question maybe a little bit more than had you come about it in a more organic way.
Yes. Yeah, completely understand that. So at some point, you're basically watching him excel in his lane.
Absolutely.
And you have a passion for it, but it's sort of you're trying to gauge, is this passion really am I jumping into this thing, or is it sort of biased, or is it what is this at some point?
Exactly. How do I jump into this river that's flowing?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, that was a great way of kind of summarizing my kind of dilemma coming into it all. But I kind of knew from a young age that I was interested in it more than just, as a passing interest or a hobby. Mm-hmm. Because I was very inspired, not only by him, but, as a kid, we'd go to Florida. Mm-hmm. And Florida is really what inspired my personal take on design. because we would go to, sometimes we would go out for dinner, or we would visit hotels. There were tons of hotels. Miami was like a booming place when I was
absolutely
a child.
Mm-hmm.
It went through like a couple renaissances.
Totally.
But there was a time when Miami was kind of dead, and then like the Art Deco, they began to reconstruct the old Art Deco buildings in Miami. And I got to see a lot of that. And first of all, Miami was inspiring because the buildings are wacky and colorful, and they're so cool. Yeah.
And it's like indoor-outdoor spaces, and you can really do a lot with indoor-outdoor spaces down there compared to here.
Yeah, true.
Totally. Big difference.
Yes, it's very true. And that's why Miami actually has such a happening design scene also.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's so much you can do there.
You know, one of the cool things that you brought in with you were these scents. Okay. And and what you're describing is really falling in love with design, but falling in love with the feeling of a space and starting to respect how much changing spaces can reflect on you and change you and shape you is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. The smallest thing can have such an impact on the way you feel in a space.
Yeah. Well, the studio feels and smells awesome here.
So she brought a bunch of essential oils, and we kind of each dabbled in a scent that resonated with us.
Yes.
I love a bit of peppermint on the back of the neck. It's very calming and cooling.
It's
But
fun.
yeah, we all just kind of perked up.
What resonated with me was the rose oil. Is it rose oil?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I've got to get some rose oil for my place.
Yeah.
Because you walk into a room and it smells like that, and it completely sort of forces a sigh of relief, breath.
Yeah.
Almost.
There's also something in hotels that do that as well with scents. Like the Shangri-La has a certain scent, and different hotels that have specific scents.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, as soon as you get in, you get into your room, or it smells something, or you walk in the lobby, you're like, you know, it's like, I mean,
it's an essential oil. It must be
so
some
it's
type
something.
It's essential.
Yeah,
you know what
essential.
it is? Because I'm thinking of my own place, and I'm thinking of how much it would come to life. With
a certain
those essential
scent.
oils.
Yeah. They're so much fun to play with. And I feel like you're so bang on there. Like, with hotels, it's all about, you know, the fantasy and creating the mood and like, what is this experience I'm having in this new place? And like, and yet like
an essence of luxury.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And then like, but then there's this whole element of like, it's new and exciting, but like also you want to feel like you're at home.
Yeah.
Right.
You still want to feel like, you know, what's making this comfortable for me.
Right.
And that's something that I've always like lifelong passion about hotels, and it did start in Miami for sure. Specifically the Delano. Have you guys heard of the Delano?
No, maybe heard of, but never been there.
Okay, so when I was 12, the Delano was the most happening hotel. It was bought by Madonna.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is when Miami was like the place. Okay, Madonna had a hotel. All the stars had hotels. She had Philip Stark do the interior design of the hotel, and his design. When I saw it, I was like, this is so cool. He was just able to, he was the first designer I saw who really was able to put his fantasy world into reality. It was like, you felt like you were in his brain.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was very cool. It was very cool. Like there were oversized furniture. There was, it was a bit like, his thing is a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, like a fantasy world where like furniture is oversized, and, you know, there's like, the breakfast table and the swimming pool and
right.
Yeah.
And that would be a space that you know that he spec'd out and probably built custom.
Yeah.
Everything in the space.
Yeah.
Like to the furniture too, and like every little piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool because you know, most of the time, especially as a prosumer designer, you know, like like not a legit where you've got like you have the luxury to imagine. It's not even cost. It's just you don't know what you're able to do necessarily.
Yes.
Like you don't have the luxury to imagine spaces and your furniture and all the finishings as completely custom. You know, but what's crazy and unbelievable about being an architect is that some of the stuff that you dabble in and have like dare to dream all the time.
Yeah.
Which is like mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. I have to say, I love my job.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
But I love it more now than I used to. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting one to unpack.
Yeah, because, what I do, so we do home renovations.
Mhm.
We specialize in renovation. So there's a lot of people that will do new build, but I love the reno.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it.
They're even more complicated to me.
They are.
Like
They actually are.
Wrapping my head around a real tough reno
Yeah.
is much more difficult than wrapping my head around a new build.
100%.
It's like
100%. It's the same for the professional. Like new builds are a blank canvas.
Right.
Easier to start with.
Right.
Renos, you really do have to get into the nitty gritty of everything. You have to know their house inside and out before you even start the project.
And who knows what you might find along the process.
But the thing is, though,
you find some funny things.
Well, the thing is, you embark on this path knowing you've got tons of problems ahead of you that you can't always identify all of them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, first of all, the client could potentially become a problem. Okay. There's your first potential problem.
Yep,
okay.
for sure.
And from there, it doesn't get any better because now you've got like foundation, you've got roof, you've got
plumbing,
you've got the things in the walls that you can't really foresee. You've got like all of these different things.
It's exciting.
It's exciting.
I see your face light up. I know that. You're like,
I get excited.
But like
people get worried, but I'm just like, ooh.
How?
There's a process to everything.
Yeah, because it must be very difficult to actually confidently say to the customer, this will be done by this date.
Yes.
That must be like virtually impossible.
It's not super impossible. It's hard. It's impossible, I would say, on day one.
Yes.
Right.
Definitely.
But after you've done like a little bit of the preliminary work around the project, you can get a sense for pretty precisely within a couple of months how long the project should take. There's obviously always extenuating circumstances.
And how does this love for hotels and spaces that are very much, well, a lot of them that you were saying were buildings that were older that they did evolve and reno.
Yes.
So that passion ultimately leads along the path to this business.
Yeah.
So it's really cool in the sense that if you can really establish those same pillars of feelings in a home in some respect as you have in some of those hotels.
Absolutely. And I would think
really cool.
It's very cool. I think that's something that I continue to aspire to, to bring in that hotel quality vibe that, like everything's going to be taken care of. Your hooks are going to be where they need to be. You're going to have enough fresh towels in the right location. Those are things, like down to. So I worked with Brian Gluckstein when I was younger, when I was like trying to figure out what my direction was. Fantastic experience. Like I have so much respect for the man. But I just remember being on site and we were installing one of his projects. And that happened in like less than a week, where like all the furniture was scheduled to come in all at the same time. We would unpack all the furniture. People would come and install it, put it together, open. But then like it got better, where it got more like more and more detailed. So then you'd unpack the bed sheets, then you would unpack the toothbrush, then you would you would figure out down to the toothbrush, where is this going to go? And that was also so much fun to see, because that's to me, that's in keeping with hospitality experience.
Yes.
Knowing that, it's going to be taken care of for you, that you're going to have everything you need where you want it. So that was a great foray into the residential, the housing side of things, that really brought it together for me, because I was very into the hotel aspect of things too.
Right. Because when you think of architecture and like a lot of what people would perceive as architecture is like walls, drawing walls, windows, like all of that. But you're really going beyond that into really the creating a lifestyle.
Yes.
Creating, like, not only creating the space, but this is the full package you're going to need to thrive in this space.
Yes. And we are very much about the holistic viewpoint. So sometimes we'll have people coming to us asking me to do just the architectural portion of the house, and there'll be an interior design team, which will do the interior design. Sometimes I'll get brought in as the interior designer and they'll say, we already have an architect. And I'll say, okay, great. I'm happy to do the interior design.
Yeah.
Let's collaborate. And there's a very defined line as to like where my job starts and where like the architect takes over.
Right.
Because there needs to be, because the two fields are very overlapping in a lot of areas.
Right. But if you don't handshake well with that architect, the customer doesn't really get a holistic result.
That's the thing. So in an ideal world, I would love to have the clients that understand that, you know, having an architect to do the interior design as well is advantageous because in a lot of ways, because,
Absolutely.
you know, it's like when you walk into a historical building or an old building and you connect with the space because the bones are there.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk about bones.
Yeah. Right.
Because that's what gives you like the gravitas of a space.
Yeah.
You know, and that's in our DNA, I think, actually. Like the idea that space and like the way we've been making space and the classical architecture, you know, back in the day, it was all symmetrical, or it was based on classicism. It was based on, you know, the pillars of the Greek pillars and like there were like 7 truths of architecture.
Right.
They had to be, you know, I don't remember the
It
pillars.
boiled down to sort of a formula.
It was a formula.
Powerful but rigid too.
Powerful but rigid, but it came from like these like deep down principles about like human interaction and human space. And it's like, you know, like the Fibonacci sequence.
Yes,
like
yes.
These like sacred geometries.
Yeah.
It's like you can't really explain them, but they're there and they're incredibly impactful.
Yeah, incredibly impactful. But like when I walk into a space, so back to like the architecture and interior design
Just coming
question.
together. Yeah.
So the way they come together on the inside of a space is so important to the overall design and aesthetic of a space because it's the bones. Like it's where form and function meet the beauty of the surfaces that you choose and you want to be able to manipulate the walls.
Right.
Right.
Yes,
and not just dress them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like an interior, for you to come in and just do the interior design, any way you slice it, the customer's getting the lack of your ability to understand the whole picture at the infancy when you could actually make decisions that impact where that toothbrush is or where the towels are.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I totally agree.
So it's like because I think of certain spaces and it's almost like you can see that the house has had a complete disconnect between the architect and between the person who's then like even the contractor. Like a lot of this stuff, sometimes the architect will not even, like the contractor will be making decisions that even the architect maybe should have been making, especially when it comes to built-ins, especially when it comes, you know.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of disconnect that I find results in lack of functionality, lifestyle functionality.
And just coordination.
Right.
Like the coordination required on a project is intense.
Right. Absolutely.
Somebody might think, you know, they're changing their house or changing their space, and they might think they just need a contractor and an interior designer. But what they really need is an architect.
Right.
How do you, like someone, you know, we did a renovation at the cottage and we had a contractor and no interior designer. But I feel like based on the structural changes that maybe could have made a more functional space, having an architect would have been a very valuable choice.
Yes.
How do you help people realize that you actually really need an architect?
Better call the architect.
It's like, wait a second. We need an architect.
That's an ongoing dilemma in our field. I think there's a huge lack amongst architectural professionals, especially to communicate what it is they do. But not to blame architects, but also like it's most people don't really understand what the architect's role is. And that's okay. I think that, you know, architects are able to put they're able to put the project together in a different way than it would happen if you started with the interior designer, which sometimes it happens on a project. It really does. Like sometimes the interior designer is brought in first and the architects then brought in afterwards. And this, like, they already have an idea of what the spaces are going to look like from the inside.
Right.
And that impacts the architecture, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And it just happens that way sometimes. So actually somebody wrote in and asked me, what is your best piece of advice if you're starting a renovation project? And I would have to say that I think a great thing in every situation would be to always get your team together at the beginning from the outset. Get your architect, get your builder, get your interior designer if you're not using me as your interior designer, and get the team together, because you can't, like, as the owner, it's very understandable how people would have problems or difficulties seeing around those corners. But, you know, with a modicum of, you know, effort at the beginning phases of the design from all the various, and you don't have to spend like $1 million to figure out what your project is going to be.
Right.
But if you have all the various professionals putting their input in from the beginning, you're going to have a much clearer route to the finish line.
Yes.
And you're also going to avoid pitfalls that happen along the way. So I think that would be like my most key piece of advice.
Yeah. So if somebody's acquiring a home,
Yes.
existing home,
Yeah.
and they know that they, you know, like sometimes someone will buy a home and they know they want to do some stuff. You know, they want to like maybe open up a room. You know, they just need a wall taken down.
Yeah.
They just need like a wall and some new furniture.
Yes.
You're saying really at that stage, that person really will be better served by actually dealing with an architect at that stage and expressing those ambitions to an architect and starting top down right then and there.
I think so. I mean, but I'm biased because I'm an architect.
Right.
But, you know, you could start that process with an interior designer as well. You know, something that I've learned is that when you're working with people, the best thing that you can do is just be able to adapt and do whatever is best for the project. Like, you don't want to be pushing a project on someone that they don't want. You want that person, it's so personal. Design is so personal. You want that person to feel comfortable in their own space.
Yeah.
Because what you like to look at is ultimately the things that make you feel good. And that's different for everybody. So I think that, you know, like from the outset, if it's an interior designer guiding you along that process, like I always think like bring people in, or, you know, talk about the potential. An interior designer is definitely capable of discussing the potential of a project with someone. But I think at some point, like to have the biggest, we always go for gold. Like we always start with like the biggest, best possible project.
Yeah.
And what we do is after a preliminary phase of design, we'll do something called value engineering.
Okay.
Do you know what that is?
No, tell me. What's value engineering?
It's so dorky.
I love it.
So it's not cost cutting, but it's essentially figuring out, so you do a preliminary phase of work, then let's say I would hand that to the builder, and the builder would say, okay, we're going to give an allowance to all these different areas of design that you want to do. Like you said, you know, we'll do our like room by room analysis where the client will say like, I would like a kitchen with 2 islands, and I would like 3 walk-in closets, or whatever it is that people want to do. And we'll space plan. We'll do the layouts really quickly in a very rough way. But we'll put in all the, you know, like the dream. We go for the dream, right?
Right.
And then, you know, we obviously, everybody has to work within a budget.
Right. You pack it full of all of the
Bells and
ultimate
whistles.
bells and
Whistles. And you also figure out like how much space you need. And I like to work from the inside out, because if you just tack a box on like an addition, you don't know ultimately if that box is going to have all the things that you want in your house. Am I going to have room for this? Am I going to have, you know, whatever it is that you're interested in doing with your home. Whereas if you start with the room by room analysis from the inside, you can figure out exactly how much space you need. Like my gym will be 300 square feet. And you can add as much on as you need, other than like, whereas the reverse would be
like, let's put an addition on. We need an addition. Pop an extension on.
Exactly. And then figuring out what works on the inside, right?
All your extra stuff ends up in the addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not what you had envisioned, like this isn't what I wanted.
We didn't call the architect.
So I guess, as far as the mindset of an ideal client,
yes,
it really is somebody who really values the process. Is that the case? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. Like, I think valuing the process, well, I think it's an excitement for the process.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot to be excited about. It can be a long process, but hopefully it's a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Can be a bit like therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
But like fun therapy.
Unpacking all the layers here.
Yeah. Like, oh, so you like purple. Why is it you like purple? Let's talk about that. Whatever it is, sometimes we're presenting materials and the materials are like lovely and they've got like a nice honed finish and you want to touch them. It's very sensual. It's enjoyable. Mm-hmm. It's nice to be presented with like beautiful things and get to make your decisions. So it helps when people participate in the process. It helps when people are interested in the process because ultimately I make something and then I give it to you. Right. It's yours. And, I want you to like it. Like, it would be weird if it is kind of, people talk about the dream where it's like, go nuts, like do whatever you want on this project. But like, I think that would be scary and hard because what if you do something and they're just like, I don't like that.
Oh my gosh.
Like, why did you do this?
Right.
Yeah.
So I do like.
Because it's awesome.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah.
This is very exciting. Such a complicated piece. So they needed to use a technology called CNC.
Yes.
You've heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So which cuts on, angles in 3 dimensions. So we had to, in order to build this, we had to make a computer model.
Mm-hmm.
And we gave it to the mill workers and the geometry, all the pieces, so complicated. They had to put the whole thing together and then take it apart and then put it back together on site. We didn't know. The whole question was, is this going to line up with the staircase? Or are you going to see like this awkward gap in the middle? They measure it and they do it on site once the stairs are in, but you really just don't know if it's going to line up perfectly because it comes down to craftsmanship, right?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the staircase with the bookshelf in. Beautiful.
Yeah, so here's how it all came together.
It's
and
beautiful.
You can kind of see actually the kitchen through that hole.
Yeah.
You can see the brass
wow. Oh, I'm so excited to see pictures of this.
I know, it's going to be really awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
When the pictures come out or it's in Arch Digest or something,
we may have them before the episode airs. Who knows?
Oh, that would be so sweet.
Yeah, we'll definitely include them for sure.
Awesome.
When you buy a home for yourself,
yes,
you must have a lot of extra pressure to try and figure out, Or
she probably feels it's an exciting adventure.
It is, but it's but
it's a lot. Man,
it must be extra.
I have a lot of sympathy for clients sometimes because it's a lot for anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot for us. It's a lot for them. Like buying a house, where's it going to go? What's it going to look like? How much are we going to do? It's a whole big chunk of your life, really.
And it is, especially if you're going this custom. You better have some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. So exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
And Studio We sounds like it's just like the perfect place for anybody who is dreaming of doing a renovation or starting a renovation. Okay. I would love to go to you to get something.
Yeah, me too. I'm so inspired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you,
guys. I feel
like
the space would just have the best vibe. Beth, it's been fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh,
thanks for taking us through the process because I have had that. You have a contractor, and now I really absolutely you need to have an architect. An architect is essential.
Absolutely,
to make your dreams come true.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you guys so much. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into this episode with Beth. Check out her company, Studio We, at studiowe.ca. That's studio, WI.ca.
Watch more episodes of Cast of Creators on YouTube, listen on your favorite podcast platform, or visit castofcreators.com.
And don't forget to subscribe.